You come to face down on concrete. The first thing you register is the cold. Not the cold of weather, but of a space that has never once been touched by sunlight. The smell hits second. Rust, antiseptic, and beneath both of those something older and damper, like wet timber, sealed behind walls for years. You push yourself up and the chain announces itself before you see it. A metallic scrape against the floor, resistance at your left ankle, 6 feet of hardened steel linking you to a pipe in the wall that has been there long enough to have bled rust down the concrete in long orange streaks. The room is roughly 12 by 12 feet, bare concrete on 3 sides. The fourth wall holds a large industrial clock, its second hand sweeping in real time, and below it, on a metal shelf bolted directly into the concrete, sits a cassette player. Old, battered, the housing cracked along one corner. A red light blinks on its face. Beside it, a laminated card in clean block lettering. Press play. The single fluorescent tube above you hums and flickers, then holds. You look at the fourth wall, the one directly across from you, and realize it is not concrete. It is plexiglass, scratched and thick, and behind it is a room that mirrors yours almost exactly. The same gray floor, the same pipe, the same chain. The woman on the other side is already awake. She has been watching you sleep. She presses one hand flat against the plexiglass and mouths 2 words. He knows. You press play. The voice on the tape is calm, not robotic. Calm. Deliberate, the way a man speaks when he has thought very carefully about what he wants to say and has decided that every word will carry weight. It tells you that you have spent your career making decisions, clean decisions, processed decisions. It tells you that today you will make one more, but that this time the outcome will not be filed under a denial code and carried forward to the next fiscal quarter. It outlines the mechanics without drama. Somewhere in this room and the room behind the plexiglass are the components to release both chains. The mechanisms are linked. Working together is possible. Working against each other is also possible. At the end of 90 minutes, the walls on both sides will begin to move inward. Not quickly. The clock currently reads 11:47. The second hand does not pause. You look at the woman. She holds up a diagram against the plexiglass, hand-drawn on yellowed paper, already found while you were unconscious. She chose to wait. The panel in your wall takes 4 minutes to find. You run your palms along every seam until one gives. A shallow rectangular section that swings inward on a hidden pivot to reveal a narrow shelf. On it, a key and a laminated document. You recognize the letterhead before you recognize the specific case. It is a claims denial letter. It has your name printed at the top in the sender line and your signature at the bottom in blue ink. The patient's name is redacted, but the diagnosis is not. Stage 3 glioblastoma, experimental immunotherapy. Denial code 27B, excluded procedure. The date in the upper right corner reads March 14th, 3 years ago. You remember it being a Thursday. You remember the claim being one of 11 you processed before noon. The tape plays a second, shorter message you didn't know was queued. The key in your hand opens her chain. Or yours. Not both. The woman is pressing her palm against the plexiglass again. She doesn't know what you're holding. She just knows you have a key. On her side, she has found something too. She holds it up flat against the scratched surface so you can see. A photograph. A man, middle-aged and gaunt, seated beside a hospital bed in the specific hunched posture of someone who has been sitting in that same chair for weeks. It takes you a moment. Then it doesn't. She turns the photograph over. There is writing on the back. She reads it. When she looks up at you again, the expression on her face has changed in a way you cannot name and cannot look away from. You find the second mechanism by accident, a pressure plate flush, with the floor near the center of the room, no marking, no warning. Stepping on it triggers an audible click and releases a second panel in your wall. Inside, a hand crank and a thin steel tube running horizontally through the concrete into her side. 60 full rotations of the crank, a process taking roughly 3 minutes, will release a secondary chain on her ankle and give her access to a locked box somewhere on her side. The mechanism requires sustained effort. While you turn it, you cannot move your feet. You are completely stationary. She can do whatever she wants with 3 minutes. 71 minutes on the clock. You look at the widow of the man whose claim you denied on a Thursday morning and you start cranking. All 60 rotations. Your shoulders burn by 40. The chain on her ankle releases with a heavy mechanical snap you feel through the tube before you hear it. She crosses to the far corner of her room and opens a box you couldn't see from your ankle, a metal container bolted to her wall at floor level. Inside, a second cassette player, smaller, and an earpiece. She listens. You watch her face. The tape is not long. When it ends, she doesn't speak for almost a minute. 51 minutes. You can hear the walls now. A low grinding you initially thought was the fluorescent tube. 2 inches of travel since you woke up. The score marks near the floor confirm it. This room has been used before. She speaks through the plexiglass for the first time, pressing close enough that you can hear her through the thickness. Her voice is flat and precise. She tells you what the tape said, that you had flagged the claim internally before denying it, that a senior adjuster had reviewed it 2 days prior and noted it as a strong candidate for exception approval, that the discretionary authority to overturn the denial existed and had your name attached to it. You don't deny it, you don't speak at all. She tells you that you chose not to use it, that 3 exception approvals in a single month triggered an audit threshold, and you had other cases open you didn't want examined. She tells you her husband had 6 weeks after your denial was processed. She tells you that he might have had 6 months. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Quiet devastation doesn't require volume. It requires precision, and she is precise. She turns her back to the plexiglass and sits on the floor facing her own wall. The combination lock on the box she opened has 5 digits. The code is in her head. Her hand rests near it without touching it. 22 minutes. The walls have traveled roughly 18 inches in total. The room is tightening in a way you can now see without measuring. The red X that was spray painted on the center of the floor is no longer centered. The walls are not rushing. They don't need to. You don't calculate. You don't construct a case. You say it through the plexiglass into the concrete, into the room, and your voice sounds different to you than it ever has in a professional context. Thinner, without the practiced evenness that carried you through 11 claims before noon on a Thursday. You tell her you knew. You tell her you had the authority. You tell her you didn't use it. And that it wasn't about protocol. That it was about your own cases, your own exposure, your own continuation. You tell her you're sorry. Not as a prelude to anything, just as the thing itself. She doesn't turn around, but her hand moves to the combination lock. 5 digits enter. The mechanism on your side releases. The ankle chain hits the floor. The steel door, previously beyond the chain's reach, is now in front of you. The handle turns, the door opens onto a corridor with a staircase at its end and gray light at the top of the stairs. Cold air and the distant smell of diesel and wet asphalt. Her chain is still locked, the door's open. 9 minutes on the clock, nothing in the rules said you had to stay. You search the corridor just past the threshold and find the final panel in under 2 minutes. Mounted directly to the wall, your full name printed on a laminated label affixed to the front. Inside, a single-page claims approval form, pre-filled, her husband's name, unredacted, the first time you have seen it in 3 years, the procedure, approved, the date, 3 years ago, a pen attached by a wire, a note in the same block lettering as everything else in this room, sign it. He is already dead. This form will not change that. What it will do is create a documented record in your own handwriting of a discretionary decision that should have been made and wasn't. A record submittable to the regulatory board that oversees your license. You understand this completely. Your hand understands it too, which is why it is shaking in a way it never shook on any document you processed in a professional context before today. You sign it. The pen scratches across the laminate. The signal transmits. Her lock clicks open. She walks out of her room and into the corridor 3 minutes before the clock expires. The walls stop when the timer hits 0, 4 feet of travel from their original position. The room did not crush. It only ever needed to run out of time. You emerge together into a loading bay as gray dawn light cuts across wet concrete. The air smells of rain and diesel exhaust, and somewhere to the north, police sirens are already moving. An anonymous tip filed 90 minutes ago, just as the clock started. You sit on a concrete barrier. She sits 6 feet away. Neither of you speak. After a long time, she reaches into her pocket and sets the photograph on the ground. In the space between you, the man in the hospital chair, his name written on the back. She stands and walks toward the sound of the sirens without it. Not because she is leaving it behind, because she always understood who it was actually for. You sit in the gray light holding a photograph of a man you never met, whose name you processed in under 90 seconds on a Thursday 3 years ago, and whose face you are looking at for the first time now, in the specific silence of a morning that cost you everything you spent his life protecting. Every year, hundreds of thousands of medical claims are denied across the country. A fraction are ever appealed. Most denials are processed, filed, and carried forward without another thought. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.